What's up guys, Spin Firearms here, and if you know me, I carry a little bit of everything, all the way from 380, occasionally up to 10mm when I'm in the woods. And today we're going to basically break down, talk about different calibers, how snappy they are, felt recoil, how they're handled in certain platforms, and so on. But before we get started, hit the like button, drop a comment down below, tell me, are you one of those people that will only carry 9mm, or are you someone who likes a little bit more power, a little bit more oomph, in what you're carrying? Especially in mag restricted states, I would say carry something with a bit more power. Now I love 9mm for its speed, I love 380 also for its speed, but at the same time, if you really train, you can shoot stuff like 45 ACP and 357 SIG very fast as well, but you are getting extra stopping power and just overall a great defensive round. Let's get into it. So 380, there's nothing to it. Especially in these small setups, they're great shooters. Like if you saw my video of me shooting my Taurus Spectrum, there is no muzzle flip. Very little recoil. I shoot it super fast and it moves like this. It almost feels like a 22 even out of these super tiny firearms. Now if you move into something like a Ruger Security 380 or something like a Glock 28, which is going to be the same exact size as a Glock 27, there is no recoil. That's why a lot of people go to it. If you have arthritis, hand problems, if you've had wrist surgery, like I had double wrist surgery, 380 is a great round for you. The slides are very easy to rack, the recoil is very limited, and you feel nothing. Very little muzzle flip, even on longer barrel 380s. It is a great way to go. And 380 can still be very great for defensive rounds. You just got to get Underwood Extreme Defenders or Civil Liberty Defense rounds, a little bit more powerful of a round to be paired with that smaller, slower round, and you'll be just fine. 380 is a great carry, especially in the summer. I just don't recommend it for main carry or your main carry in winter or certain situations where people are going to be wearing coats, hoodies, layers, stuff like that. But 380 is a great round, so that can't be counted out. Next up is going to be your 9mm. 9mm is what I'd say not 80% of people carry, maybe even 90% nowadays. It's a very manageable round, and what it does is it allows you to have great capacity with also great shootability. So it's almost like the best of both worlds, but there's other rounds that are both best of both rounds as well. 9mm is very powerful, and what everyone claims is the technology today makes it the best round. But here's the thing, the technology is also spread out to all these other calibers. The ammo manufacturers are doing the same exact technology in all these calibers, so it's no different with the larger rounds. But 9mm is a great round. You can get tons of capacity out of super small firearms like these Micro 9s nowadays. It's absolutely ridiculous how much capacity you can get. Very shootable, and I would say this is the round that I would start most people off at for your first carry firearm, especially in a setup like a Glock 26 with a 3.5-inch barrel, a little bit thicker, a little bit heavier, very, very manageable, very shootable. Now how I would compare it is very little muzzle flip, but also very little felt recoil. It's a very flat shooting round, so it allows you to get very fast follow-up shots, and also a very reliable round. Next up on my power list, I would say, is going to be 45 ACP. 45 ACP, a lot of people see the size of the round and they get scared. They get nervous. They think it's going to be super snappy. Like when I take people to the range and I say, here. And then they shoot it and they go, oh my goodness, that was smooth as can be. Especially in a setup like a Glock 30 where you have that big thick slide. It handles 45 ACP like no other. Also 1911s, it handles 45 really well. Once again, very little muzzle flip, but you are going to feel a little bit more recoil. But it's not much more than 9mm. That's at least how I feel it. One of my best shooting firearms that I own is my XDS, and it's a 3.3-inch barrel, a single stack, very thin, very light, and this handles 45 ACP like an absolute beast. It tames that round, and it's very, very accurate. I shoot this better than almost all my other firearms except Glock 26s and Hellcats and stuff like that, but you're getting that extra power, extra stopping power. It may take less rounds to defend yourself is my point when I say that. So these are a great way to go. 45 ACP is not scary. It's not snappy. It is a very smooth shooting round. And actually on my rankings, I listed my Glock 30 as one of my favorite top 5 firearms to shoot, simply because of how smooth and fun it is to shoot, because the recoil truly isn't that bad. From there, we're going to go 357 SIG. 357 SIG, now you're getting into a more snappy round. And what 357 SIG is, it's a bottleneck round. So it has a 9mm projectile with basically a 40 casing or 40, like your powder is the same amount as in a 40. So basically what that is one, the bottleneck round was designed for reliability. You have this smaller round with the bigger casing, so you're not going to have feeding issues. And on top of that, it's meant to have a lot more power than 9mm, and yes, it truly does. Shout out to Chooks Outdoor Adventures. He has a great channel. He has the same setup, a shield and 357 SIG. And man, this thing is snappier, but once again, very manageable. And that power is worth it. Once again, this may take less rounds to defend yourself, so therefore less follow-up shots. Therefore, the recoil isn't as big of a deal. As long as you're training, it's not that bad. But I will say it does have noticeably more power than 9mm and 45 ACP. I should have included 45 GAP right after 9mm, so my bad. 45 GAP is a shortened 45 ACP round with similar ballistics to 45 ACP. And it's meant to be put into smaller frame firearms. So at 45 ACP, it's going to be shortened a little bit so it can fit into something like this, which is the same exact size as a Glock 26 or 27 frame. But it just has a thicker slide to help with that recoil, and man, is this so shootable. This is one of the most shootable firearms I've ever owned. The only problem, just like 357 SIG, is very limited ammo. I mean, you can find it everywhere because no one shoots this round or no one shoots 357 SIG anymore. But eventually, who knows if it'll fade out completely and if they're going to keep making those rounds for everybody who has those firearms. Next up is going to be your 40. Now, this is where it gets a little snappier. In my opinion, 40 is a little snappier than 357 SIG, but at the same time, manageable. Now, it's going to be reasonably more snappy than 9mm and 380. It's also more felt recoil than your 45. It's definitely a firearm that you have to train with. Once you get into 40 and 10mm, you can get really good with them, but at the same time, if you're used to 9mm and if you're used to 380, it may be a little shock, especially in a smaller frame, thinner firearm like this. Once you're shooting like a Glock 23 and above, larger firearms than 40, it's not as bad. But you can get thick boys like this that really handle the recoil. The HK P2000 subcompact really handles that 40 really well. And on top of that, you're still getting good capacity. These are both 9+1 setups of 40. And right here, you're getting a 10+1 setup of 40. And these, what they all have in common is thicker slides to handle that recoil. So it really handles it well. But once again, 40 is going to be reasonably snappier than 9 and 380. And a tad bit snappier than a 45 ACP because 45 is just so smooth. But 40, you're really going to feel that power in your hand. And shooting a smaller firearm like a Glock 27, if you're not used to it, you may walk away saying, wow, that is some real power. My hand is feeling something right now. And then last but definitely not least is a firearm that I do not carry for everyday carry, but it's something I carry in the woods to defend myself with against bears, other animals, stuff like that. 10mm can basically stop anything in North America. You'll be able to stop bears, mountain lions, people, villains, whatever the case may be. You'll be able to take care of yourself. This is true power. Even compared to a 40, it's reasonably more snappy. I mean, it is snappy. But once again, if you train with it, you can get really good with it. And also, it is so powerful. Honestly, this is a one-shot stopper. It's going to be very hard for someone to get up after getting hit with a 10mm. It just is what it is. These are very versatile rounds, but I think 40 is the most versatile. I think this is a great way to go for everyday carry. Because once again, if you only had one firearm and you chose the Glock 27, you can throw in all the larger mags. And on top of that, you can carry 200 grain hardcast rounds for the woods. And then also switch it up to Civil Liberty Defense rounds or Underwood Extreme Defenders for everyday carry. And man, you'll have such a sweet setup. You just got to train with the larger calibers. But 10mm is so powerful, I get nervous about over penetration and stuff like that. And what's also pretty cool is with a 10mm, you can shoot 40 out of it, because 40 is basically a 10mm short. So that's why you noticeably feel the difference, is because this has a reasonable amount more of powder than 40 does. But they're the same exact width projectile and stuff like that. So even though they are very similar, the 29 has a lot more recoil. And 29 has a lot more recoil than anything on this table. But once again, it's all about training and stuff like that. I do not recommend 10mm for everyday carry, but I recommend everything 40 and down. They're all reasonable. You can get a hold of all of them. You can handle the recoil really well, and the shootability is definitely there with all of them. I tend to carry 9mm, 357 SIG, and 40 the most. Occasionally, I do carry my XDS because it's such a great shooter for its size and it's very small and you can pocket carry it. The capacity is just very limited. The 357 SIG, this is my work carry because I need something very small, very light, very thin, but I also need power. And the 357 SIG round is one of the best rounds in the world for reliability and power for everyday carry. So that is why I go with that, and that's going right back in the holster. But that is how I would list them in terms of recoil and muzzle flip and so on. They're all great rounds. I'm not someone who just says, oh, 9mm, 9mm. No, I literally carry everything. Anyways, guys, appreciate you watching. Have a good one.